Welcome back. We are now ready to start creating our pipeline in Data Factory. So we'll go in this order. We'll create the link services first, and then we'll create the datasets, and then we'll create the pipeline and the copy activity. And then we will do a debug of the pipeline to run it end to end. So let's switch over to the Azure portal. So here we are in our Azure portal on the dashboard that we created. So click on the ADF icon and then click on Launch Studio button. That opens up another tab. So here, you click on Manage, which is the fourth one or the bottom one on the top left menu. And then if Link Services is not already selected, click on that, click New. So the first one we are going to do, as we said, is the link service for the Azure Blob Store. So as you can see, that is this one. So click on that and click Continue. From here, you give a name for our link service. Choose the default integration runtime. For the account authentication method, let's go with the account key, but there are other more secure and stronger authentication methods here. We'll talk about those later. And also, when you choose the account key, you can also either choose the connection string or the Azure Key Vault. We'll talk Azure Key Vault later on. But let's go with the connection string for now. And if you keep the account selection method on the Azure subscription, you would be able to select your subscription and then find the storage account name. So the one we want to connect to is the COVID Reporting Project SA storage account. Choose that and test your connection. Connection successful now, and click Create. And that's created the first link service we wanted to do. Let's create the link service for the Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So click New, and then Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is here. But if you ever have difficulty finding it, just search up here and click on Data Lake Storage Gen 2, click Continue. Let's name our Data Lake Storage and to link service. Similar to what we did on the other link service. Let's accept the defaults here and choose the subscription and find the storage account. And remember to pick the one which is the Data Lake Storage Gen 2, which is COVID Reporting Learn ADF DL. Click Test. And then click Create to create the link service. So we've created both link services, one for the Blob Store and the other one for the Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Now we need to create the corresponding data sets. So for that you need to come over to this pencil icon here, which is the author. And then as you can see here, you've got pipelines, datasets, and data flows. Let's click on Dataset and the three dots here and click New Dataset. And the dataset we are going to create for the first one is the Azure Blob Storage, which is our source. So again, pick Azure Blob Storage, click Continue. And here you've got the choice of all the formats you can choose. In our case, it is a delimiter text. It is type delimiter text. So we are going to choose that one. Click Continue. And then now name your dataset. And then pick the link service, which we've already created. The one we got for this storage account is this one. And now we need to give the path within the storage account. You can type in the parts here, but you can go and pick it here because we've already created the containers and the files have been uploaded as well. So double click on population and then that lists the file. So choose the file. So it's populated the part and the file name for you here. And as we know in our data, we got the first row is the header. So let's pick that schema. You can import the schema from the file itself, but in our case we are just going to simply copy the file across. We are not going to examine the data or manipulate the data in any way during the copy activity. So let's pick none for this and then click OK. So as you can see, this is the dataset being created. So you've got the name of the dataset that we gave here. I would encourage you to add descriptions and you can annotate the dataset as well. And in terms of connections, we've already chosen the link service here. File path has already been chosen by us, and compression, we gotta specify that. So in our case, it is a g.zip file. So I put g.zip up here, compression level, let's go for optimal. And column delimiter in our case is tab rather than comma. So let's change that to tab and you can leave the others as default. And that's everything. Schema tab, as we said here, we don't need to import the schema because we are not going to examine the data. And let's leave the parameters out for now, that we'll discuss that later in another module. So that is the first dataset created. Let's create the next one. So click Create New Dataset. And then now the next one is our Data Lake Storage Gen 2 dataset. So we are going to click Continue here. Again, it is a delimiter text. It's a tab-separated values file. Click Continue. And I'm going to name our dataset here. Then pick the link service. So in this case it is the ls_ad ls_COVID reporting project DL. For the file part, we know we've created a container there, which is the raw container, but we haven't got a file already populated there because that's the file we are going to copy across. So let's name the file as we wanted it to be. So that would be population_by_age.tsv. And we know again that actually this file is going to have the first row as the header. And as we said before, let's not worry about the schema for the moment and click OK. And again, in here we want to change a few things. So compression type, we can leave it as none, but the delimiter is a tab and you can leave with this as default. So this dataset's now be created as well. But there are a couple of things you can do to validate what you've done is correct. So one is you can preview the data. So that tells you whether your delimiters are correct and your encoding is correct and all of that. But in this case, it's a target dataset. So there is no file. We don't have this file already, so we can't really preview the data, but we can do that in our source. So let's switch back to the source. So this one, we've already put the file in our container. So let's click on the preview and it should bring back the data. So as you can see, it's got the header is identified correctly and the columns are all identified correctly as well. So that's one way of validating your datasets. And secondly, ADF itself gives you the ability to validate all objects within the data factory. So if you click on that one, that runs the validation. And then if there are any errors, it will tell you the errors. But in this case, there are no errors. And one more thing before we move on to creating the pipelines is you may have noticed that actually the yellow box, yellow circle here with the number 2. So what that indicates is actually anything you've created in here is not being saved yet. So the thing to remember is what you did here, which was creating the link service under the Manage tab, was immediately saved into the Data Factory. But anything you do within the Art tab is not immediately saved within the Data Factory. You can run debugs, you can do all of that while you're in there, but if you come out of it, you will lose all your work. So the thing to do is click on Publish All. So if you click on that, that will tell you what's changed between what's in the Data Factory and what you've done now. And if you click Publish, it'll commit the change into the Data Factory and your work is saved there. So I think we stop here, and in the next session, we'll create the pipeline and the activity, and then we'll debug the pipeline as well. So on this note, I am stopping over here. See you in the next session.